All right, hey everyone. This video is a follow-up to less more. Should you even buy a house at all? And here's the thing is as soon as I posted that, a ton of people left comments both on the positive and negative side. I had people say things like, yeah, I'll never buy a house. It's terrible. It's the worst thing ever. Then I had a lot of people say, hey, I had a great experience. I made a ton of money. I paid it off. Everything was fine. I had a great tenant for 9 years. But here's the thing is when it comes down to it, there are way more cons than there are pros. But maybe these few benefits, like a forced savings account, stability, predictability, these things might actually outweigh not buying a house. So here's the thing is the good news is if you want to buy a house, do it. But here are things that you can buy instead of buying the standard single family normal house that you can offset the downsides and have a better upside. So obviously you can not take that gamble and say, I'm just going to rent a place. Your gamble is going to be a lot less severe if you just say, hey, I'm going to live out of Airbnbs, I'm going to live out of hotels, I'm going to live out of a rental apartment. And you can use things like location arbitrage, like I'm doing, where I'm living in cheaper places like in Chiang Mai, Thailand, or here in Kiev, Ukraine, or I was in Budapest, I was in Barcelona, Spain, and it's so much cheaper living here than owning a house in California where I'm from. But if I was going to buy a house, what I would buy is either a multiplex or an apartment building. So anything with more than one door, as you call it, any kind of multifamily unit. So instead of me buying a single family house, which is just a place for me to live, I would buy at least a duplex, if not a triplex or a fourplex, which means I own this house, but there are 2, 3, or 4 separate units in there that I can rent out. So my parents, the only reason why their house is a great value or that it was a great idea for them to buy it is because they converted the downstairs kind of in-law unit into an apartment where they collect rent every single month. They're in San Francisco. They're getting about $1,500 a month. And that was what kept them afloat, what helped them pay for their mortgage, and now is a source of income. So that's kind of like a duplex. If you could have 3 units and you can live in one and rent out the other 2, even better. Fourplex, even better. And as you get bigger, you can move into the commercial real estate. So something like an apartment. How amazing would it be if you bought an apartment building, let's say 10 units, 20, maybe even bigger, and you lived in one of the units and you rented out the rest? Imagine your friends coming over and they're like, oh, you just have this small 2-bedroom apartment. Little do they know you rent you rent out the entire building and you own all of them. What's cool is the other tenants don't even need to know you're the owner. You can hire a property manager, you can hire a superintendent, and they can take care of the plumbing, collecting rent. And you can just live in one of the units rent free and collect cash flow from the other units. And I think that would be my ultimate dream. So instead of me buying a $1 million house in California, which isn't even that big nowadays, it's maybe a 3 or 4 bedroom, 2-bath house. If I can buy a $1 million apartment building somewhere that has 10 units and have that cash flow, to me, that is a way better investment. And if anything, I think having a mortgage on a house, so let's say you kind of over leverage yourself and you have a big mortgage on a house, that is definitely a liability. 100% that's a liability. But if you have a big mortgage on an apartment building that is cash flow positive, it's still a liability, but now it's a business liability, not a personal one. So if you can get a 40 unit apartment building with whatever your down payment is, that is such a better investment than buying a house for yourself to live in. So what do you do if you don't want to, first, if you don't want to buy an entire building yourself, or you don't want to manage it, you don't want to maintain it, you don't even want to hire someone? You can do things like you can invest into funds. So we had on the CEO of Fundrise, which is one of the kind of modern day investment platforms where they go out and they find deals. They buy apartment complexes And instead of you spending, all of your money into one deal, you can put $1,000 or $2,000 into a bunch of small deals. So these 6 units, I actually own partial equity in, which means I am one of a couple hundred of owners of these apartment complexes, and I get paid. They pay me quarterly. They collect rent for me. I own equity and I get the payments, and it's amazing. I mean, it's one of those things where this was not an option when our parents grew up. So, 5 or 10 years ago. And I'm so happy it's around today because this has made it so much easier to invest in commercial real estate, invest in apartment complexes, and not have to own a big chunk of it or the whole thing. I can diversify and I can have managers built in. It's amazing. If you want to know more about this, there's a link in the description below, or just go to investlikeaboss.com and look for episode 12 with Fundrise's CEO, Ben Miller. Another thing I have a significant investment in is Pure Street. We had them on episode 13 of Invest Like a Boss, and they came on and they explained that you can loan money with peer-to-peer lending to people who own houses, who are either they're fixing the houses, they're remodeling, they bought it to flip, or whatever they're doing. And what's really cool is instead of you loaning that money out like with Pure Street, with Lending Club, where it's not secured, it's not backed, with Pure Street, they are backed with real estate. So if you look at the loan to value ratios, for most of these units, they're taking, let's say, 25 to 30% of the actual, they have 30% of equity in there. So what that means is they are not leveraging 100% of the house value. And that's good, because if there is a housing collapse, the stock market, busts, or there's a depression, good news is if they can't pay back the house, we get the house. So what's nice is Pure Street will take care of that. They will, either get them to pay back what's owed, or they will repossess the house because they are the first lien holder. And when they sell the house, they can pay back everyone who's invested. And what's awesome is doing this has allowed me to invest in a lot of deals. So I have about $60,000 in Pure Street right now, which is about $40 to $60, $1,000 to $2,000 hard money loans, and I'm getting paid between 7 to 10% interest, and it's backed by real estate. So technically, between Fundrise and between Pure Street, I actually technically own a lot of real estate. And I've been able to do this while traveling, while being a digital nomad, while being location dependent, never having to fix a toilet, never having to worry about any one property, because now I technically have dozens of properties that I've invested in without actually owning any of them. So what can we learn from this? Be the landlord, right? That's probably the best thing is, instead of you owning a house, or instead of you renting a house, be the landlord and collect the money. Cash flow is always going to be king. It always has been king, and it always will be king. So whatever you do, think about cash flow first, and think about where you want to live. Here's the thing is, they've done the math. If you stay in the same place for 25 to 30 years, most likely you're going to be ahead, right? But first off, it's not guaranteed. There's going to be all these variables, but to me, that's not flexibility. That's not really being able to enjoy life. All these dots are places I could live. These are places that I have either visited recently, or I've lived in, or I plan to. And it's one of those things where it's amazing nowadays with things like Airbnb to be able to rent a house or an apartment for a whole month, have it be fully furnished, have zero liabilities, and you can do it anywhere in the world. So at the end of the day, be your own judge. Take the facts from both sides. I have no reason to sway you one or the other. I just want to really give you this information because I wish someone would have gave this to me when I was, really just thinking about, should I buy a house? And there was a big chance I would have bought a house by now if I had never traveled, if I had never read the 4-Hour Work Week, if I never became a digital nomad. I've never really kind of opened my eyes to all this stuff. So if you are going to buy something, what I would recommend is either buy something that cash flows where you can get your investment back for it, or if you really, really, really want the stability, you really want to buy something that you own, that you're not going to have rent increases on, that you can have your family grow up in, and if the stability aspect is worth a lot to you, and for some people it might be priceless, what I would recommend is buy something that's below your means. Buy something that's a starter home. It could be a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. Something, don't try to keep up with the Joneses and buy the biggest house that you can kind of afford. Buy something small. Buy something that you can actually pay for either in cash, or you can put 20% down on, or buy something like a tiny home. Like, I'm a huge fan of tiny homes, shipping container homes, these alternative types of living. And the reason why people like them so much is because you can buy them for $30,000 to $50,000 and not have a mortgage. And that makes your life a million times easier. So take a look at some of those videos on YouTube. And if you have any questions, you can find me at johnnyfd.com. That's where I blog about my travel, about business, and about things I'm interested in, like alternative living and personal finance. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, leave one below, because this is a very big topic and everyone has a lot of opinions on this. I really want to hear yours, and I would love to make more videos on this topic. So let me know what you want to hear about. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.